All right, so it's a trend that's not letting up, the Great Resignation. Millions of workers quitting their jobs and rethinking their careers. Some are going back to college. Others are picking up new trades.
According to the labor market, 47.4 million people quit their jobs in 2021. Now, there are many different reasons, from a teacher leaving a job to become a plumbing apprentice to childcare workers looking to find higher paying jobs. Here with us today is Carly Carey, a former teacher for more than a decade who became a plumbing apprentice during the pandemic. Welcome to the show and good morning to you. So what contributed to your shift from teaching to plumbing?
Yeah, great question. So I was a teacher for 11 years and it was amazing. But like maybe 9-10 years into it, I thought the world's a really big place and I want to go experience more stuff. So I taught until the end of 2020, and those few months of being online were super brutal, as all teachers know. And I knew that was sort of the time for me to look for different careers. So I started to think about what my next thing would be. And the trades just were a really natural place to fall.
That is so interesting, because sometimes you see people when they leave an industry, they kind of slide into something that seems a little bit connected. Are you finding any connection between teaching and what you're doing now, or not so much?
You know, that's like such a great question. And actually, yeah, I think there's a lot of like time management. There's a lot of creative thinking, which goes along with teaching and being a plumbing apprentice. There's a good deal of social interaction as a plumbing apprentice or as a plumber. You know, we work in homes, residential homes. So constantly connecting and communicating with homeowners. And then there's a lot of, something comes up you weren't expecting, and how do you adapt to that? So there actually are some parallels.
Super interesting. So have you experienced any challenges, when you're making this transition?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me was going from, I taught for 11 years. I felt super comfortable in my classroom. I felt really comfortable with the content. I was like, grooving and just really good at what I did. And I think it's a humbling thing to go back to the beginning and to go back to knowing nothing. So I think the biggest challenge for me personally has been just how do you handle, not knowing a lot, and how do you handle, being a student again and knowing very little. So that has had its challenges of just like accepting where you are in your journey and working from there. But I think that's the hardest part for me, is just like, I know nothing. How do I just be okay with that?
Right. And know something at the end of it. Do you plan
exactly.
to?
If you can walk away. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, if you can walk away from a day as an apprentice knowing one more thing, you're like, okay, we're good. This is a good day.
Absolutely. So do you plan to ever go back into teaching?
I don't know what my future holds. I never thought I would be a plumbing apprentice, so who knows? But I think I can see myself being a teacher in the space of the skilled trades. Actually, one really cool project I'm working on right now is with this company called Matriarchy Build, and it just launched. And it's a queer, Latinx, women-owned business, and it provides telehealth for DIY projects. And so you can buy time with a pro, which I'm a plumbing pro, and then I walk you through a project and sort of teach you how to do whatever it is that you are wanting to do, change a faucet or whatever. So I feel like that's a really great, marriage of both of my skills, skill as a teacher and skill as a plumbing apprentice.
Absolutely, because that has been kind of the more fascinating parts of this Great Resignation, as we're calling it, is people leaving an industry for something totally different and then never going back to it. So that's really interesting. So can you explain to our viewers who may not know how a plumbing apprenticeship works?
Yeah, I knew nothing coming into this. I've learned a whole bunch. So there's two routes. There's the union route, and the non-union route. My shop is a non-union shop. So what that means is I work with a licensed journey worker every day, and I need to accrue about 7,000 hours over around 4 years it will take. And then after that, I sit for a big state test. And once I pass that big state test, then I will be a licensed plumber in the state of Minnesota.
Got it.
So a lot of it is just learning through watching and learning through doing with, someone who knows way more than you overseeing you.
Right. So what would be some of your advice to someone who may be considering changing careers, but they're kind of on the edge, not really quite sure, maybe a little bit nervous to take a big risk? Because essentially that's what you did.
Yeah, I took a huge risk. And sometimes I look back, I'm thinking, wow, this was wacky. Here I am, but this was a wacky ride.
Yeah.
I would say do your research. Like learn about, if you have interest in a lot of different things, do your research. If you have an idea of what you want to do, but you don't want to like commit and, dive in head first, ask if you can do shadow people. The setup I had with my current boss was like, let's see if a 2-week trial period, if this is what I want to do. So I didn't commit. It wasn't like, I was committing forever. It was just like, I want to try this out. So I would say, do your research. I would say, be brave and think outside the box. And I would say, don't be afraid to ask for what you want and need. So those are the 3 things I would tell someone who wants to shift careers.
All right. Awesome advice. Carly Carey, plumbing apprentice. Thank you for your time today. Best of luck to you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.